Hey, soul survivor. So, we're going to talk about medical narcissism. And I have just experienced this during my breast biopsy for breast cancer. And when you have this little bit of knowledge, this is what happens in narcissistic relationships. You have something just seems off. So, for me, I start asking question after question after question when it's something important. Otherwise, I kind of brush it off. But how does this happen? Who is more prevalent to be a medical narcissist? So it's a term that's used to describe healthcare professionals, doctors, nurses, therapists, also other medical providers who exhibit narcissistic traits within their practice. So these individuals do prioritize their ego, status, or reputation over patient care. And I'll tell you a little more about my story and more statistics coming up. But this makes them resistant to feedback, dismissive of concerns, and potentially dangerous in medical settings. I had a friend who, I can't remember if it was encephalitis or meningitis. I think it was encephalitis. But she was saying that she just had this like creepy kind of feeling and something didn't feel right. And she ended up in a coma, almost died. They were talking about pulling the plug. They didn't want to listen to her. They dismissed her because they thought they knew better, didn't need to listen to what she said, and just kind of assumed she was just, emotional woman. Also, myself, I had questioned, did they take the right biopsy material because of where the microcalcification was. They told me they saw more than they did. They finally admitted to it. They seemed to have really good bedside manners, asking what my concerns were. When I told them, they were still dismissive. So it was like a waste of time. So the key characteristics of medical narcissism. Medical narcissists often have these traits that are associated with NPD, narcissistic personality disorder, but they specifically manifest in the healthcare setting. So their common behaviors include overconfidence in their abilities. They may ignore second opinions or dismiss concerns from colleagues. They don't want to hear it. They just want to be right. They don't care about other people's inputs. But they also can have a lack of empathy for patients, whether it's the patient's pain, fears, or concerns can be minimized or dismissed. And that's what mine were kind of talked about, but it was full of gaslighting, full of lies. Like one of my surgeons was trying to show empathy because he thought I was anxious about having the biopsy. So he kind of changed the percent of it possibly being malignant, bad for cancer. So just to get me in there for the biopsy. So it's kind of like the manipulation. Also, intolerance to criticism. They may react defensively to any feedback, even if it's constructive. They can blame others for their mistakes. That's what I went through. She was trying to say that the pathologist, based on her having a foreign language as her first language, she was saying that it was probably grammatical errors, but I'm an English as a second language teacher. I saw right through it. For her to have medical working English, she knows how to make plurals and singular. So you get this gut feeling that something just isn't right and they're just BSing you, gaslighting you. And the prioritizing reputation over patient care, they be more focused on appearing competent than actually providing the best care. Sorry, I'm a little tongue-tied. Authoritarian behavior, they often insist that they are the ultimate authority and they don't like the questioning. Some doctors will get irritated if you bring any concerns up. In a sense, you can kind of understand it because they have people with, WebMD coming with all these self-diagnoses, but when you're trying to advocate for yourself and you haven't been to medical school and you're doing your due diligence, they should at least hear it out because it is a area of concern and they can correct it or listen to what you have to say. Also, manipulative tendencies, they may twist facts to avoid accountability. So I had that one trying to manipulate me into feeling more comfortable about having the biopsy, not concerned about truth. And then the other one was telling me that when I said I was not comfortable having a resident do the biopsy, I even asked her, "You're going to be in the room. Why can't you do it?" And she's like, "Well, then we can just do it another day." But I took the day off of work. I got a dog sitter, traveled across state, got all prepped for this. And they're just like, "We'll just come back." She's in the room. So when I had the problems during the biopsy, she knew I had that concern in the beginning, and she wasn't willing to work with me. So it threw everything off, and my results probably would have been accurate if she had listened to my concerns. And there was really no reason she couldn't have done it. It is a teaching hospital, so they put their money for I feel that if it's a teaching hospital and the patient is uncomfortable with it, that is a priority, not using people as guinea pigs, to allow them to still be human. And when the opportunity arises, go ahead and study it. The resident could have watched and still learned. So it caused a lot of problems for me, and I had brought it up ahead of time. So she was trying to avoid accountability for her part in it. So how common is medical narcissism? Let's talk about some statistics. So we got to remember, it's not a formal diagnosis. Research suggests that narcissistic traits are more common in high status, high power professions, just like medicine. So the key findings: doctors score higher on narcissism scales than the general population. And that's according to the American Journal of Psychiatry back in 2020. And also surgeons, they rank among the highest in narcissistic traits due to their high pressure role, and it's also status driven. Around 20% of doctors exhibit moderate to high narcissistic traits. Let me say that again, around 20%, which can negatively impact patient relationships. Medical professionals with narcissistic tendencies, they are more likely to face malpractice suits due to their arrogance and poor communication. So they are more likely to get that like during that reactive abuse, when they cause you to react. And if they had a different demeanor, maybe you wouldn't be as likely to sue them. You might forgive them a little bit. But narcissistic doctors are linked to higher burnout rates among nurses due to toxic workplace dynamics. So when the doctor is being bossy and not listening to the nurse, there are a lot of nurses that when they do question the doctor's orders, that they can save lives. So not all narcissistic doctors are dangerous. Unchecked narcissism in the medical field can lead to misdiagnosis, patient harm, toxic work environments, but the misdiagnosis and medical errors. Medical narcissists often believe they're infallible, making them more likely to dismiss symptoms, ignore patient input, and refuse second opinions. They can rush diagnoses without proper investigation. That's kind of what mine was. Patients that have complex or rare conditions are often labeled as difficult or delusional. That happened with my friend that went into the coma, nearly died. Like, she is so lucky she's still alive. So instead of receiving proper care. So let's say we have a patient and they're presenting with persistent ongoing symptoms that were dismissed by a doctor as this person's just anxious, rather than being tested for a rare autoimmune disease. So if you guys have autoimmune diseases, it's next to impossible to get doctors to really listen to you. They'll think it's depression, they'll think it's anxiety, and a lot of times it leads to a delay and often sometimes severe complications. Poor doctor-patient communication. The patient starts to feel unheard, dismissed, or belittled just for asking questions. So I felt heard. Like, she asked me, like, why don't you want to have the resident? So she listened to me, but did not take any of it into consideration. She just dismissed it. And it's like, you're making me waste my time because you're You're dismissing my reasoning, not trying to understand and not giving empathy towards it. So medical narcissists, they can use complex jargon. They do this to appear superior rather than ensuring patient understanding. Gaslighting can be common. Patients are made to feel like their pain or symptoms are all in their head. I had that when I had like I was getting sick and I went into the ER and the doctor just dismissed it. And I went back the next day to work because he's telling me I'm fine. And my uvula, the punching bag in the back of my throat, started swelling so much. I was choking on it and I had to end up in the ER. Turns out I had, according to the doctor, he was young, but according to the doctor, the worst case of mono that he had ever seen. So I wasn't just making it up. The previous doctor said, you're fine. There's no way somebody your age should have a medical file this thick. He obviously didn't look that I'm a burn victim. I had stitches 7 different times due to being a tomboy. And then, burn scar revision surgery, different kinds of illnesses like bronchitis or, different things like that. So let's say a woman, one who has endometriosis, was repeatedly told by her doctor that her pain was just her period. It was just cramps. So it took years before another provider confirmed her condition. So instead of really listening to her, they're just assuming. And sometimes, too, it's even more difficult when it's a man. A lot of us base our perception on things based on our own personal experiences. And sometimes it's hard to understand what somebody else is going through, but a lot of doctors will dismiss it, even if you're persistent on it, and it can be quite frustrating. Resistance to feedback and covering up mistakes. Mine had said she saw 4 or 5 microcalcifications during this breast biopsy, and I know what I saw. I saw one, and she's telling me, well, I have a better computer screen than you do, a larger magnification. So she's saying she saw 4 or 5. And I kind of questioned it for like, I was annoying. And so she called me back today and she's like, yeah, there was only one, according to pathology. So where does she get this 4 or 5? They're bright white dots. There's not mistaking them. You might not know if they're micro or macro. Macro are the larger ones, but she didn't want to take accountability, but blaming, she did tell me what the report was, though. So I'll give her that. I will give her that. But she was just making stuff up. Like, where do you get this number from? Also blaming staff or, saying maybe it was even the patient for unforeseen complications. They resist learning from their mistakes. This can lead to repeated issues. And colleagues who challenge them sometimes can be punished, isolated, or retaliated against. They might try to get that person fired or have the other staff turn against them. So a surgeon can ignore a post-op infection sign within a patient, and they can sometimes blame the nursing staff when the complications arose. And this kind of delay sometimes leads to serious harm. Also, the toxic work environments and burnout among staff. Narcissistic doctors will bully, belittle, or intimidate nurses and the full medical teams. They can take credit for other people's work, but when something goes wrong, they blame the staff for the failures. And nurses within these environments report higher stress, anxiety, and burnout because it can be extremely emotionally draining. So let's say a hospital's ICU team experienced a high turnover due to narcissistic led physician who frequently yelled at the staff, refused to listen to their input, and just created a toxic culture. It's really important, to allow people to have a say in things. And I know nurses, they risk their lives during COVID and they still do, like every day if they're coming in contact with um, infectious diseases and also, sometimes violent or erratic patients. And they're doing a lot for people. And they're knowledgeable. So it's important to listen to them. So how to navigate a relationship with a medical narcissist, whether it's as a patient or a colleague. Advocate for yourself. Don't be afraid to push for tests or second opinions. That's what I had to do. Document everything. Keep records of symptoms, diagnosis, conversations, and seek a second opinion. So I am doing all of this right now, documenting everything. It should, I don't know. They needed to take twice as much as they needed for the breast biopsy. It bled for an hour and 15 minutes instead of the usual 5 to 10. I also got strawberry sized hematoma, which is a blood clot. Also bring a trusted friend or family member to appointments. Luckily, my sister, I love you, Susie. She is a nurse practitioner, so I was lucky enough to have her with me. She's advocated for a lot of people in our family. Also, don't be intimidated by their authority. So when it was said that I could come back for her to do it, it was a big inconvenience. She would have allowed that, but sometimes, for me, it's like, I've already done this. You're kind of scaring me with the 50% cancer rate. And she's trying to tell me that she would have her mother have a biopsy from the resident. She trusts her that much. And I don't know, she really would have. It was interesting. My sister said that the radiologist said I would feel completely comfortable with her having it done on my mother. And my sister's like, well, she didn't say herself. So I found that a little interesting too. So as a professional medical person or colleague, set firm boundaries. You don't have to tolerate that mistreatment or manipulation. Document even those interactions. If these issues arise, keep the records. And sometimes it's important to seek mentorship from emotionally intelligent leaders. Advocate for a culture of accountability and protect your mental health. Toxic workplaces can cause burnout. So that's why you see a lot of teachers or I know probation officers, policemen too. Policemen will arrest people and just see it dismissed or they get off the hook. And it gets really frustrating when people aren't held accountable. So the medical narcissism is a serious issue and it can lead to misdiagnosis, medical errors, patient neglect, and toxic workplaces. So remember, they're not all dangerous. Sometimes they're just arrogant, but unchecked arrogance and lack of empathy can compromise patient care and team dynamics. So if you'd like some help in identifying red flags of a narcissistic doctor or how to report the medical misconduct, let me know. Share some of your stories. Tell me any topic requests that you would like, some things you found interesting, but most of all, share your stories. It helps others to not feel quite so alone. Hope this was helpful. Please like, subscribe, and share if it'll help someone.